when I was 18, I lost my best friend in a really tragic car accident when I had gone off to university. And I think that was one of the biggest catalysts, was my grief of being like, once the numbness kind of wore off, of being like, no, I need to understand how this world works, and where do we go after, and what do we do, and what's the point of being here. And that all really came from anger, but ended up being the most healing part of it for me, of being like, no, now it's not like a adventure. I have to know.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability and fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to this episode of Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. And today I have with me Daina Hughes. Daina is a soul coach, certified end-of-life doula, and co-author of Look Up. With a unique approach to healing and spiritual growth, Daina specializes in guiding individuals on their personal journeys of awakening, self-discovery, and transformation. As part of the team at Angelic Healing, Daina uses a deeply intuitive coaching style, one that is completely tailored to the individual with no fixed framework. This allows each person to access their own inner wisdom, align with their true path, and unlock the answers they seek. Whether navigating life's transitions, healing emotional wounds, or embarking on a spiritual awakening, Daina empowers each soul to discover their light and share it with the world. Through a blend of expertise, compassion, and experience, Daina offers a safe, supportive space for clients to illuminate their path and embrace their highest potential. Welcome, Daina. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this.
I'm excited to have you, and just listening to that bio, I'm really interested in a lot of things and getting deeper. But before we do, I have a segment called What Comes to Mind. So you let me know the first thing you think of and try not to think too hard on it.
Okay, I love that. Okay, go.
What comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
Authentic.
Mm, that's good. What do you do to center yourself when you feel stressed or depressed or maybe even, anxious?
I usually will try to schedule in a meditation as soon as possible. But when the schedule is a bit crazy, I just try to pause for in the moment of whatever I'm doing, whether it's sneaking away to the bathroom or just pausing or muting myself on a meeting, to just come back into center, put my hand on my chest and remember who I am. That's what I try.
Ooh, remember who I am. I think that goes with that authenticity as well. Question, you said scheduling the meditation. What do you mean by that? You're working with a guided someone who guides you through it?
No, I do our own meditations or myself or even in silence. But when I have those moments, like those urges where I'm like, I need something, whether that's like a 30 minutes to cry it out or a meditation or a journal, like I've physically put it in my schedule so that I treat it as just as important as any other event that I might have
Nice.
that day.
I'm glad I clarified that because that is so important. Because I say if it's not on my schedule, chances are it's not getting done. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories actually. A long time ago when I was in therapy, a therapist taught me that. And she was like, you need to
Mhm.
start scheduling your crying sessions into your
Mm,
calendar because you run everything off your calendar. And so I did that for many, many of years, and it was very helpful.
nice. You met yourself where you were. I like
Yeah,
that. I like that.
exactly.
Yeah. What is one of your favorite childhood memories?
Well, you said don't think too hard.
This one makes people think a little bit.
You know what? One of my favorite memories from childhood is that I grew up primarily in my father's household, and every single night that we could, we always ate dinner together as a family.
Mm.
And of all the things I cherish, that's one of the things I cherish most.
Wow, that's special. That's really special. I'm glad you had that. And you grew up in Canada?
Yes,
Yes. And so where are you now?
I'm in Canada. I am in Alberta, which is like on the west side of Canada, the
Okay.
Texas of Canada, they do say.
I got you. I got you. Well, cool. Tell me a little bit about the background story of Dana. Like what led you to the life that you're living today?
Oh, this is so funny. This is a question I'm asked in the book actually, and I say I literally have no idea because my I don't always credit like one aha moment, but like an accumulation of catalysts that kind of came together to form the being that I am today, and that is ever evolving. But I didn't grow up in a house of spirituality. There was no set framework of belief system. When I was younger, my dad just said, "I don't really care what you believe in, but believe in something. Just
Mm-hmm.
find something that matters to you and stands with you." And then I began to passionately explore social issues and religion, and never felt all the way there. Like I saw beauty in a lot of it and I loved a lot of it. And then I would hit a moment where I was like, ugh, nope, that's not it. And so I kind of just felt a lot of years frustrated with the world and just trying to figure out what to do with that. And then when I was 18, I lost my best friend in a really tragic car accident
Mm.
when I had gone off to university. And I think that was one of the biggest catalysts was my grief of being like, once the numbness kind of wore off of being like, no, I need to understand how this world works and where do we go after and what do we do and
Wow.
what's the point of being here. And that all really came from anger, but ended up being the most healing part of it for me of being like, no, 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 now it's not like a adventure. I have to know who I
Mm.
am and what I'm doing here, because I have that purpose. I needed that purpose in life. And so that's really what started my awakening. And then my dad was also going through an awakening at the same time, which I was super resistant to at the beginning. I was like, get away from me. I don't know what you're talking about. And then as I started to heal through my grief, like I came back and, really started asking those questions and being honest and brave enough to ask the questions, even if I didn't love the answers that I was getting. So then I spent a couple years training in the community with mediums and Reiki healers and teaching and guiding. And, then the pandemic happened and we did a lot in the virtual reality world. And then I would say that I thought then I was like awakened and I had hit the moment. And then I became a mom, just over 2 years ago, which was like a whole,
Congratulations.
thank
Yeah.
you. And that was like a whole other awakening of understanding my purpose on this world a bit more. So that's how I
Wow.
came to today, but who knows where we're going next.
Yeah, like you said, ever evolving. Wow, that's powerful, and I'm sorry to hear about your friend.
Thank you.
That's such a tragic way to die and so early. But it sounds like you took that, you grieved through it, right? Can you talk about that grief process? Like you didn't just blow through it, right? You had anger, you had a lot of different things there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a unique circumstance. Like, yes, she was very young. I was 18, but she was 16
Mm,
at the time, and or 17. And there was so much anger because there was someone to blame, like someone did actually like go to prison like for her death. And
mm,
I ebbed and flowed through all of it, but one thing that I always said, she had a spunky personality, and so every time I would get really deep in it, it would just be like she would kick my butt, like, and I mean it, like she would physically abuse me if she knew that I was just sitting here like wasting my life and my
wow.
passion and my purpose. And then so it definitely took some time, as the grieving process does, and it hits you and it comes in waves and it will for years and years. But I think one of the biggest things is, when we talk about tragedy or trauma in life, you kind of are a part of a club where you're like, you only really know if you know.
Hmm.
And that was kind of when I realized that, like, grief and understanding death and how I process that is quite unique to other people. And then I kind of realized, as odd as it is to say, I'm kind of good at it.
Yeah.
And I was able to help other people. And then I decided to turn that into something productive, and help and guide people through grief and through death and all of it. And that turned that pain into something so powerful for me.
Hmm.
And then I'm at a point now in my life where it's not that I'm grateful that it happened, but it was one of the most pivotal transformations that I've ever been through. And I would not be who I was without knowing her, but also without losing her.
Yeah. What would you say your feeling is toward, like you mentioned that there was anger and a person to be angry about. Has that feeling evolved or has that stayed the same?
I think at the beginning it was really easy to sit in it because it gave me something tangible. to be angry at or to vent about or put the feelings I had on the inside outside.
Mhm.
But I don't feel any anger towards him at all. He went to prison. He's out of prison. I went to like verdict day. There's a lot of people in the community that were like really involved in the trial and have some really deep still feelings, and all of that is still incredibly valid. But I also take the path of that's God's business, and I'm
Mhm.
not going to waste my energy in my life wishing unwell on someone who is where doing whatever they're doing, because I don't believe that her in heaven that she's mad anymore, and it's just not my burden
Wow.
to carry.
That's such a beautiful perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
You're
Wow.
welcome.
Can you go back to when you said your dad was like just believe in something, right? And you started to explore, you started to adventure for yourself, and you said that there were social issues that you were passionate about. Can you list some of those, or what was
Yeah.
young Dana interested in?
Everything. Uh, I think it's funny because criminal reform is one of the top things on my list, and it goes in tandem with everything I believe about spirituality and
Mm,
people and growth and second chances. So that was a big thing. And although I said that I live in a similar like kind of Texas vibe, I also am in a very metropolitan city, and I was
mhm.
often in my neighborhoods and in my schooling. I was often the maybe one white girl there, the one white kid there. And so that was like a different perspective of understanding race in the world. And then kind of growing up and realizing that, wait, this is not the normal perspective for everyone. Like I'm kind of seeing it from a different toe than a lot of people do. And so definitely like, that is definitely something on my list. And I mean, my husband is black and my daughter is biracial now.
Yeah.
So that's something
What
that kind of grew from the beginning.
Yeah, what was the predominant I guess ethnicity or race where you were? Because I don't even I don't know. It's hard for me in Tennessee to associate that. Like I don't know.
I would say it's probably a mix between like the black community and also like East Asian,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
a lot of people from India, Pakistan, in that area that all live around here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Nice. Well,
Mm.
good. Your dad has had an influence on you. I'm just curious. Like what is your dad mean to you? If he was listening to this podcast, what would you say?
My dad is everything to me. He's not only my mentor in this world, my first best friend, but he's also my boss at Angelic Healing. He's the founder of the company, and so he's my North Star in life. I dedicate the book to him, and he's the
Wow.
one who taught me how to ask questions, and he's the one who encouraged me to ask questions, and the one who oh, I'm gonna get goosebumps now. But he really built me up to be a person who knows what I believe in and stands on that. And if he ever had a doubt that I wasn't confident, he would push me just to make sure that I could be confident. And so he really built me up to have the drive and the ambition, but also the tenderness and the heart that I have all at the same time, which is a pretty difficult combination to do as a father. But he did it really well.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't mind my asking, and that was beautiful, by the way, and I hope he listens to this. And I can tell, like there's a deep connection there. And so, um, um, if you don't mind, addressing your mom
Yeah.
or any motherly figures in your life.
Yeah, so I do have a stepmother, and she's been in my life as long as my recollection exists. They got together when I was like an early toddler. My biological mom, I have a good relationship with her as an adult. She wasn't entirely present when I was a kid. She had other kids, and she didn't live here for a while. So
Mhm.
I have a good relationship with her now, and she's a great grandmother. But I never had that like maternal relationship with, to be honest, either of them, because my stepmom
Mm.
was trying and I was too busy being upset that my mom wasn't there to we didn't really get close until I was a teenager, and we're really close now.
Yeah.
But that was definitely something I kind of had to heal through in my journey was, my mom and the feelings that I felt around that. And I think everyone wants their mom to be around, and when you're a kid you don't really understand the context of why people make different choices.
Hmm.
But I also know that while that is true and I craved that for a while, I wouldn't be who I am without
Hmm.
the upbringing that I had.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. Of my mom was very present. My mom was present physically, but I think emotionally absent.
Yeah.
And so craving that love, that nurturing, it leaves you longing, and it leaves you grieving when you do come to the realization that that wasn't your reality. and so I can imagine that there was a lot of feelings and emotions around that time. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you've been able to work through that. Have you seen any of that come up in your own parenting, like the feelings that you had, or just not knowing, questions that you have, anything like that?
Yeah, I had feelings that came up both positive and negative. I think about it when I became a mom. I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl until she was born. And
Mm.
then I had a daughter, which is the most amazing thing ever. But I think I was a little scared to have a girl because I was like,
Wow.
I don't really know. No one really showed me how to do this. Or even if they were showing me, I wasn't really paying attention. And so I was a little nervous because I didn't
Yeah.
really know what that really strong mother daughter relationship looked like from the beginning. So that was a lot of intuition, but also like just a lot of talks to myself of it's not the same. It's not the same. But there's have these little moments where like my dad or my husband will be like, "Are we overcompensating? Are we having a moment where we're
Mm.
trying to give too much of what we didn't feel that we had?" And those moments come up, but I think that that's okay because when they do, it's just like, yeah, that's exactly what that was. I'm going to think about that later and off we go because it's a growing period and it's I think everybody does that as a parent whether you're conscious of it or not. You're overcompensating or you're undercompensating or you're
Mm.
just trying to do something different or you're trying to do something the same. But when I
Yeah.
was pregnant, me and my husband had so many conversations. I'm a big conversation person. I like to talk.
That's
But I
good.
we had a lot of chats about those really vulnerable topics because he too also has a fractured relationship with his mom of what are those things that we want to make sure that our children never feel, but what are
Mhm.
those things that we want them to feel, and then also what are the things we learned out of our struggle that we're going to have to find a different way to teach them because they're not going to have that struggle, but that
Mm.
thing I learned from that struggle was really important, so how do I give her that resilience knowing she's not going to have to fight like that? So it was a lot of those conversations coming
I wanna
along.
know. I wanna know, to that last point about the
Yeah,
resilience building in a situation where they're not going through the same struggle. What are
yeah.
some of the things that you do to give that, I don't know, sense of struggle or sense of resilience building?
I think for me, it's still about having the struggle, but having the safe space at the same time.
Mm.
My dad's like quote of my lifetime. I'm surprised it's not tattooed on my forehead at this point. Is like never deny them the struggle. And I used to hate when he said
Mm.
this to me, and because there was times where he would let me struggle, and I would be like, "Why aren't you helping me?" And he's like, "Just wait." And then I would be like, "I'm so glad I did it myself," or whatever came after that. So I still want her to struggle within the boundaries of comfort. And I
Yeah.
want her to be able to understand rejection and when no happens and when those disappointment comes and know that she has a safe space to go, but also know that she can handle it. And I mean, she's only 2, so exactly how I'm going to play that out through her whole years, I will to be planned, to be evolved. But I know I had big conversations of like, how do I champion my resilience so much, but a lot of that
Mhm.
resilience came through pain. And I
Right.
want to have her be that resilient without maybe all the pain. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am not a parent, but I think I have a similar uh, dialogue in my head when I think about how would I raise someone through an experience in life that they will not see what I saw. They will not go through what I went through,
Yeah.
to the degree that I went through, especially. And just like I will keep them safe from those things, but I want to give them the things that help build resilience and put them through things that challenge them. Let them take risks, but in a safe container. And so I think that is a challenge of parenting. And I was glad to hear you just normalize the overcompensating, right? The
Mhm.
overcorrecting, the overcompensating of what we experience, because, like you said, so many folks, like, we experienced it, whether it was good or bad. Like, we want to do something
Mhm.
and either give our child more of that good experience or less of those bad ones, and it shows up. So thank you for normalizing that for all the
Yeah, I
parents
mean,
out there.
the pendulum swing is like the ever thing of growth, right? We
Yeah.
even if you're not a parent, you'd want to get rid of this thing, but it always ends up we swing to the extreme on the opposite. Like we know
Mm.
the growth journey, right? And then
Mhm.
but that's normal and that's okay. And it's probably going to take a couple swings to then find the balance that is the best of both worlds.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, wow. Can you speak to what's in your book? Look
Yeah.
up. Can you talk about that? What led to co-authoring that, and what guidance or wisdom do you provide in that?
Oh, yes. This is such an exciting project, and it was a very unexpected, you know, gift that I was given the opportunity to write this book. And my co-author is an established author, and so I guess the story that I hear was that she was looking. To talk to someone and talk to an expert in spirituality, and through my wonderful family member was given my name because she's in the editing world, and so they had to
Mm,
connect. And she was going through, some really, really difficult, vulnerable experiences, coming into questioning the world in her own time, and needed someone to kind of assist her with that, but also kind of wanted to write a book about everything that she was experiencing. And so it's this really unique coaching demonstration where she
mm,
tells all of these stories from her life that are leading to these questions that she has about the world. And so every story ends with a question, and they
mm.
are sometimes curious, sometimes very tragic stories, that led to these moments, and in her grief as well. And every story ends with a question, and then I get to answer the question through stories and moments through my own life of how maybe I learned to find that answer
Wow.
in the world.
Wow, that's really cool. That's
Yeah,
really cool. I like
yeah.
that. Is
So,
are there any examples? Can you give any examples?
oh, there's like so many examples, but I mean, it's like 14 chapters long, so I think there's like
Okay.
14 questions. But
Okay.
she'll say we always talk about chapter number 4,
Mhm.
because it started with the question, why am I finding it so hard to believe in spirituality? Like,
Mm,
why can't I just believe? And the story she was telling, I was like, Larissa, I think we need to ask a different question,
mm.
because she wasn't really frustrated with spirituality. And the thing she really was having a hard time believing in was herself. That she was believing in everything that she would see, but when it came down to the fact that it was connected to her, she didn't believe
Wow.
it. And
Wow.
so then we flipped it, and then it became of, why am I finding it so hard to believe in myself? But that was kind of a
Mm.
little peek behind the curtain of how that process went. And she gave me in bulk form, so she like it wasn't like a continuous. She just gave me all of these questions and all of these stories, and then I responded to who she was at each version of that story, not to who
Okay.
she is now. So I'm talking to different versions of herself throughout the book as she's growing and as she's getting more confident and as she's shedding more narrative. And she also comes from a little bit more of an anti-religious background and has a little bit of religious trauma there, and so there was a little bit of untwisting that at the same time of how to look at that more cleanly without being angry at the one person you met a couple years ago or what
Mhm.
may have. So it was a really unique project, and I've never really seen it be demonstrated like that, because it's so hard to articulate, what does
Yeah.
a coach do. So yeah, it was really like
That's a really cool way of writing a book, of telling a story, answering questions, coaching all in one.
yeah,
That's really cool. I like that idea. I'm curious to like what how you changed the evolution of that title of why am I having this so hard to, was it find spirituality or believe in
yeah,
spirituality, to
believe, yeah,
believing in myself or believing in me as a soul coach.
yeah,
Um, what's the connection between spirituality and me? Like I feel like at a deep level we are that, and I don't know. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to like believe and be like, oh, well, whether it's a religious, ritual, or whether it's like a tarot card, or whether it's like a prayer, whatever it may be, when it's outside, you're like, oh, I like this. This is nice. This feels good. I feel better after I do it. But the obstacle of then believing that whichever, being that you're interested in then also created you too. And if you think
Mm,
this is all magical and wonderful and beautiful, then you might have to contemplate the fact that you are as well. And you are too
mhm,
this divine creation. But that is such a blockade for some people. There's always this quote that goes around Facebook. It's like, how dare you stare at the water and the mountains and talk about the awe in which that God created, but not be able to say the same thing when you look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And so I think that was really what that chapter was about, of like, yes, the exploration is fun and going to the markets and the crystals and all that. It's so much fun and it's so exciting. But are you spending that same time exploring and building belief in yourself as you are as everything around you?
That's powerful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
What role does vulnerability play in the work that you do in helping individuals or even community?
I think everything in like the scariest way. I This is something I had to really conquer at the beginning of my awakening and as I became stepped into my role as a coach. But also, again, writing this book is that you have these moments where you're like, I want to look good. Like, I want to come off as a good coach. I want to come off like I know what I'm doing. But I can't pretend that I made this cake with different ingredients that I actually did, because I got here through pain, through moments of questioning everything, of, fail and restart and go over again and have this belief and then learn some more things. And then I'm like, I actually don't believe in any of that anymore. Now I believe in this because I
Mhm.
now have new information and
Mm,
I've changed my perspective. And
that's so
so there's
important.
so important. And when we're always worried about how it comes off, people don't admit that type of thing. And at the same time, when I'm speaking to a room of people or I'm talking to someone or they're reading my book and they're broken and they're lost and they can't relate with my story because it's all sunshines and rainbows and perfectness that I edited afterwards, that's not really true. They're thinking, that's not how it's looking for me.
Yeah.
But it never looked like that for me to begin with. And so, as someone who probably a few years ago cared way too much about what people thought about me, I had to really overcome that and say, like, if I'm not being honest about how I got here and the tears that floated me on this boat, I'm just lying. And then
Hmm.
how could I ever ask someone to trust me?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. That is so real because I think like you said opening up like vulnerability makes you think of authenticity
Yeah.
and being true to who you are. And I love what you said about the book. Like writing a book is such a process and
Yes.
there's some ugly parts to that process, just like life there's some real ugly parts. I remember I sent my manuscript over, and I'm copying things from some word docs that I've had years ago, and I'm just like putting it all together, and I sent it out, and that was probably the worst writing that I have ever sent to anyone,
Mm,
but it wasn't the final product.
right.
And I think when people finally get it, that final product in hand, they think, "Oh my gosh, it's so nice, so buttoned up, it's so tight." But the process to getting to that and knowing that it was edited and knowing that there are things that have been taken out, put in, and all of this, like, and how many eyes and people worked on that. Like that is curated for consumption, for
Yes.
commercial use. And so um yeah, I think it's kind of like social media in that way where like I could take 20,000 pictures and you only see one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, but we judge ourselves against an unrealistic standard. And
Yes.
so I'm glad that you were able to open up and be honest about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. One thing that stood out to me is this end of life doula.
Yeah.
Tell me what that is and tell me what you do.
Yeah, so it is I really got into that's the see, whenever I talk about this I feel funny because I'm like I talk about it very lightly. It's obviously very serious for people who I'm working with. But when the pandemic was going on, me and my dad and another local member to Angelic Healing volunteered in the ICU. Um,
Mm.
we had just started right before the pandemic. We had no idea that it was coming, obviously. We had all been trained up for about like 2 months, and then the whole world shut down. And the hospital was completely closed to visitors except for people doing end of life visits. And so the three of us would volunteer a couple nights a week and we would escort families from the front door and PP them and take them up to say their goodbyes and then back down. And so that kind of became our specialty, even when
Wow.
the doors opened back up and we were, if someone was dying and they needed, either the family needed help or the patient needed help, they would call us and we would go and sit with them and figure out what they needed or what the family needed to make that experience a little bit better. Sometimes it
Wow.
was just sitting with them, and then so during that time, we all got actually certified as end of life doulas, and so that can look like many different things, and it really depends on the sphere you're working in, but it's really just kind of coaching someone through that end of life process, and whether that's an extended period, and that includes their family and maybe some grief education to prepare the grieving process to begin, whether that's someone who's alone and doesn't have anybody to go through the death person with, or someone who's really struggling with their mortality, or sometimes it can kind of be in that acute care situation where someone is at the hospital, they don't have anyone, and they're going to pass away, and they need someone to come sit with them and be with them through those moments. So,
Mm, that's
mhm.
so special. Can you speak to maybe a relationship or connection that you built with a family or individual in that process and what you gained from that?
There's so many that I could talk about, but always one comes to my head. And this was really in the peak of the pandemic. And there was a very, very big family, and they were Vietnamese, I believe. And there was Zoom calls happening for basically like 24 hours straight. And we would do a lot of Zoom calls with external families. And it wasn't the interaction I had with the patient because they were pretty much unconscious by that point. I could feel them there, but it was the family, and they had gotten, I'll cry, but they gotten everybody on the Zoom, and there was people from Texas, and there was people from California, and there was people from Singapore, and there was people from Vietnam, and they
Wow.
all were on this Zoom call in like the last hour of life, and they were singing, and they were singing, and they were chanting, and you could hear it like from this little iPad. You could hear it in the whole ICU,
Mm,
and just the outpour of love that this family had. Oh, it'll stick with me for my whole
mm,
life. And
mm,
like, just when you think about the imprint that people leave, and I just felt how many people just loved that person, that I'll never
mm.
forget it.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's some powerful energy right there, and you take on a lot of energy. You take on that good feeling that you get from experiences like that,
Mhm,
but you take on heavy experiences too. How
mhm.
do you balance to keep yourself sane and to protect your energy? How do you balance all that?
Yeah, that day I think I came and like lied on the carpet for a good 15, 20 minutes when I got home and just kind of stared at the ceiling thinking about that. But self, we call it spiritual hygiene around here, but
Mm,
it's really, really important. But I think also it's the setup of how it works, because a lot of people, especially a lot of people who call themselves empaths, they really step into people's shoes,
mhm,
and sometimes will incidentally, your body feels that, and you almost kind of have these traumatic moments for yourself while sitting alongside someone else in their journey. So I
mhm,
go into those moments really knowing that the feelings that I'm feeling, and that what I'm able to kind of feel on their behalf, and the insight that I'm given to how they're feeling, is just meant for me to understand. It isn't meant for me to pack it up and put it in a bag and take home with me as though that thing happened to me. And
wow.
so learning how to walk alongside someone without actually getting in their shoes, it's definitely a difficult balance, but it's something I try to prepare on the front end rather than having to do a lot of reversal work on the back end.
What does that preparation look like? Because I think that is so powerful and needed for a lot of people who take on that secondhand trauma.
Yeah, I think it's just it sounds like an oversimplification, but it's mindset. I
Yeah.
also think it's the understanding that I know the consequences when I don't,
Mm.
and as especially as gifted or intuitive or even just vulnerable people, we feel things deeply. Like I feel things deeply, and I feel happy, happy, and I feel sad, sad. Like
Mhm.
very extreme with my emotions. So even sometimes watching the news can feel traumatic for me.
Yeah.
And my husband's like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, I just opened TikTok for too long, and I saw some things I didn't want to. Like, I need to go to bed." So I really have to do the work on the front end to make sure that I am, what's the term, observing and not absorbing, and being like
Say that
under
again. Say that again.
observing without absorbing, to make sure that that doesn't come into my heart and into my soul, well, at the same time I still feel it soulfully, if that even
Mm.
makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And you just I wanted to hear that repeated because I use those words a lot. both. And when I think about like my early upbringing and
Mhm.
being a kid with a lot of dysfunction around,
Right.
I observed a lot. I observed and I tried to keep myself safe. I found patterns in people's behavior and all of that,
Mhm.
and became, like little psychologist as a kid, just to
Yeah.
be safe.
Mhm.
But a teacher of mine, when I wrote my book, pointed out that there were multiple instances of me verbatim saying, I wish I could absorb their pain, absorb
Oof.
their pain,
Mhm.
absorb their pain. And I read back and think like that is a phrase that I've used because it's happened. I have literally allowed someone else's pain enter my heart and affect me in a way that was unhealthy for me
Yep.
when that wasn't mine to carry. And
Mhm.
I've gotten to a place in my journey where I recognize that now, where, I can sit there, I can be compassionate, I can be empathetic and understand. But once this time is over, I do my process and take care of myself. And then I have to carry what have to carry, not all
Yeah.
of yours too. So I think that that's very important and very powerful. So thank you for sharing that. And any tips that you have as you continue to do the work, um, I would love them, and I'm sure other people would too, 'cause it is
I think
heavy work.
meditation helps a lot for me, just because that's where I decompress a lot of those crazy things that are going on in my mind. I'm a big prayer person. Yeah, I meditate and prayer at different moments of different days. But also sometimes I'm a tangible person. So like I do a lot of journaling as well, especially
Mhm.
when I realize that I absorb something on accident and I'm like, wow, this is really sitting with me. I really still feel heavy about this. I have to journal. I have to talk to a higher power. I have to like physically find a way to release it from my body, whether it's a journal session, a dance session, I don't care. It's got to come out because I can't live with it on the inside affecting me like I've allowed my own life experience to in the past, right? And that's really what puts a lot of people back in healing, is that they don't even understand what they're carrying in their own body. They don't
Yeah.
have the language to say, I want it to take it away. But actually, oopsie, I did. I did take it and
Yeah.
I held it in my heart for someone who wouldn't heal it, but it sat with me for 2 decades. And I've forgotten it's there.
Mm. Dang. Dang. I'm reflecting. I'm listening back to this and I'm just gonna be like, okay, let's deep dive. No, that's really good. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Can and the work that you do with your dad, is that the doula work? Is that the end of life care work, or is it coaching and combined as well?
It's mostly coaching. We do like it's end of life is like on the service list. If someone wants to come to me for that, I'll absolutely do it. But a lot of it is more just like one-to-one coaching, whether that's, trauma recovery, whether that's gifted individuals like looking to work on whether it's healing or whether it's like mediumship's their thing, wanting to get in touch with their higher power and their spirit team and kind of really enhance that, but that usually involves a lot of healing at the same time.
Mhm.
That kind of usually goes hand in hand. So it's a
Yes.
lot of that. And then me, my dad, my husband, and one other team member are local to our area, and then the rest of our teams in the United States. So we
Oh,
are
cool.
currently as east as Wisconsin and as west as Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm curious. When you said gifted individuals, how would someone, if someone's listening to this right now, thinking like, "What is this spiritual awakening? What is this
Mhm.
talk around it?" Like, how would someone know that they were a gifted individual?
I think I always love this question because it kind of comes off like a symptom list on like WikiHow or something. But I think it's those people who've always felt, whether they had the courage to admit it out loud or to themselves, that there is a little bit more to the world. Maybe it's never felt right within religion, but the curiosity's there, the questions are there. Maybe it's always felt that your brain works a little different than everyone else, or a feeling that maybe you could help people. I always say it's usually the 7-year-olds that are doing therapy sessions when there's a Christmas dinner or something.
Mm-hmm.
You usually don't fit in with kids your age because you see the world a little bit differently, and it could be a plethora of things. But those are some of the common things that usually the gift kids have in common.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting because it's all those little things that people are like, how could that ever mean something positive? Because I've always deemed it as negative in my
Yep.
life. I'm weird, I'm odd, I don't fit in. But it actually means that you're pretty freaking cool. You just haven't figured out why yet. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, that's good, and like there's so much intuition and wisdom that you speak about, and I
yeah,
think a lot of that uh can be contributed to just innate and in us, and then a lot of it is through experience. And I've been told I'm an old soul. I think I'll add that to, like, if you've been told you're an
yes,
old soul when you're a
yeah.
very young person, like that signals to me at least that there's some deep spiritual things happening there. And so
Well,
yeah.
even what you had said about your childhood when you became like the psychologist to be able to read everybody in the room, like obviously that there's a little bit of like trauma response there, and there, but even kids like that, right, and yourself included, there's that, but the way that you're able to do it and the way that you may blame it always on the eyebrows, but you can just feel when someone walks into a room.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know how I have to behave today. Don't
Mm-hmm.
say that. Don't ask the question. Like that too is gut and that is intuition. It just was chiseled at a much
Yeah.
earlier age than it needs to be for most people.
That's dope. Do you believe in prior lives and afterlives? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I just believe a little bit different than some that you come in to your life clean. I don't believe that karma carries life to life. Oh, but I absolutely believe in where we go after. Also, unconventional. I believe everyone goes to heaven. It might just take you longer to get there. But
I like
I,
that.
yeah, I believe that the reason it takes you sometimes longer to get there is because there's that little filter, you know, process of reviewing your life and learning the lessons that you didn't learn. It was like my hint earlier, that's God's business. Everyone will learn the things they need to learn eventually, whether it's here or it's not here. Um,
Mm.
and then I just believe that when you take on your new life, it's just fresh.
It's fair. I like that. I like that everybody goes to heaven. It just takes you a little longer to get there. Like
Yeah.
we're all just, it's trial and error. We're trying to figure this thing out together, and you're figuring out what your purpose is on this life, in this life, and you're walking in it, and it's beautiful to see. You've helped tons of people, and this has been extremely helpful for me as well. And so
Thank you.
yeah, I'm really thankful that we had this opportunity. Before we hop out of here, though, I have another segment, and it's fill in
Yes.
the blank. And
Okay.
feel free to have your answers as short or as long as you want. I'm gonna ask five. Okay, so
Okay.
um, the first one is vulnerability makes me feel blank.
Powerful.
Hmm. My greatest source of strength. My greatest source of strength is blank.
My honesty.
Hmm. Wow. If I could offer one piece of advice to someone feeling isolated, it would be blank.
Make sure you become your best friend.
How does one do that?
Get to know yourself. And sometimes isolation sucks, but it's the best place to rediscover yourself unfiltered from everybody else, and
Mm,
and be your own friend.
mm, mm. If I could tell my younger self anything, it would be blank.
Ugh. Um, the things that you think are important are going to be dust in the future.
Wow. Wow. And
That
then
one took me
lastly,
a minute.
no, that's okay. That's okay. I think it was thoughtful. I prefer thoughtful responses. That's good. And then lastly, a book or resource that has profoundly impacted me is blank.
Look up The Beginner's Guide for Spirituality, written by Daina Hughes and Larissa Soren.
Hey, yes. Where can people find that book?
Yeah, Amazon, Amazon worldwide. If you have any trouble finding it, head to angelichealing.ca. But if you type in look up Dana Hughes, it should come up to you wherever you are.
Nice, nice. Dana, this has been absolutely fantastic. It's been great getting to know you and hearing about the work that you do and the person that you are and becoming. Are there any final thoughts or any last words you want to get off your chest? Any rants you want to go? You want to just cuss the world out? Do that.
Don't give me that invitation because
Whatever
I
you want.
usually say that my purpose in life is making waves through opening my big mouth. But
Yeah,
I just wanted to say I think that the work that you do here is so incredible, and encouraging people to be vulnerable, especially a man, encouraging people to be vulnerable and how important that is so important. And we talked earlier about raising kids, and I hope that we all get to raise our kids in a little bit of a different world because of people who do work like we do. So just thank you for holding space for that in your world.
absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for providing such great wisdom and great energy to the audience. I hope that people reach out to you and take you on for your services and just have a conversation because you like conversations. How can people reach you?
The easiest way is angelichealing.ca just because it's short and it's easy to spell. You can find me through there, but you can also find me TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Divine Dane is my name all over there, but you can find it through the other stuff if that's easier. But yes, reach
Awesome.
out, talk to me, ask me questions. Consultations are free. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Awesome. Sweet. Dana, thank you so much. With all the things that you could be doing and all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability. Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.